Sorry I look a little dishevelled. Well, you all saw what happened last week. Hello guys, E899 here and welcome to today's video where we'll be talking about our tips and predictions for NRL Round 2 of 2024 because the first round went so successfully. Opening match of the round takes us to Suncorp Stadium as we will see the Brisbane Broncos take on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Now both teams were on the losing end of the Vegas trip last week. So it's going to be of key importance that both teams actually get a win here because I don't want to start off the season 0-2. But I do feel like both teams sort of did not play the same, but they both kind of matched the sort of type of playing that was happening in that match. Like Brisbane, for example, weren't really in the greatest of matches. It could be said the same about the Roosters. And South, I do think, actually went quite well, but just in the last 30 minutes just switched off against Manly. It's going to be interesting to see how both teams do respond from this, but I'm just going to tip Brisbane to take the win here. I think, at home, I think they should be okay to get the win, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Rabbitohs didn't win because, it's just been that type of comp. Now we go into the first match on Friday, and that is going to be the Cronulla Sharks hosting the Canterbury Bulldogs. Now the Sharks were able to get a very crucial win over in New Zealand to open their account for round 1, and the Bulldogs last week just really didn't become any form of a factor. It's just Parramatta just dominated from whistle to whistle. So I do think this would be an interesting match, and obviously Cronulla getting that type of result over there is going to give them a hell of a lot of confidence. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tip the Sharks to take the win here because everything I feel points to it, but obviously it doesn't matter. And now we go into the final game on Friday night, and we have obviously it's probably one of the biggest matches in terms of modern or recent rivalries, and it is the Penrith Panthers up against the Parramatta Eels. Now, the Penrith Panthers were stopped in probably one of the best defensive displays I've ever seen, as the Melbourne Storm were able to beat them 8-0. And the Parramatta Eels, like mentioned in the previous match, just kind of dominated the entire match against the Bulldogs. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this match plays out. Mitchell Moses is set to start this game. He hasn't. There was a thing worried about him having like a quite serious groin injury, but he's been cleared of that, so he should be able to play. Isaac Targo actually re-signed as well, which is good for him. I think he's actually he doesn't get talked about as much in terms of the Penrith team, but I do think he's pretty good. But for this match, you can make an argument for both, to try to tip both sides, but I'm going to go and say, I reckon Parramatta might actually do him here. I honestly reckon, Parramatta it will be close, but I think Parramatta might just do him, which would be a sight to behold. Now we go into the Super Saturday matches, and we start off 3 p.m. with actually a really interesting game. It is the Canberra Raiders up against the West Tigers. The Canberra Raiders proved a lot of critics wrong in the first game last week, as they were able to defeat the Knights. Personally, it shouldn't have been that hard. The Knights didn't show up. But the West Tigers are playing their first game of the round, as obviously they had the bye. So this is going to be a really interesting test to see how things go. With this Canberra team and how Ricky Stewart has been coaching, I don't want to try to pick up the Knights, but I do think if they're able to beat the Knights away, the Canberra should be able to win this game at home. Be interesting to see how the Tigers go for this match. You obviously got Jocelyn Olam coming in, so did have a Takamanu leaving, which I do think is probably going to be a major loss for this game, but I'm just going to go and say I think Canberra should win this. Now we go to the 5:30 kickoff, and we have the North Queensland Cowboys up against the Newcastle Knights. Now, the Cowboys are currently top of the table after just demolishing the Dolphins, which, look, I tipped the Cowboys. It was one of the few ones I actually got right, but really interesting about how, really interesting of how they're playing. And when I was watching them stream, I was saying about, like, you know, if all the players just work right, they'll be a good team, and they are starting to show it. They played really well. They did make a fair amount of mistakes in the second half, where the score could have been a lot bigger. And then you got the Newcastle Knights, who just did not have a really good game. They just kept making silly mistakes, let Canberra into the game, and Canberra did deserve to win, and I was pretty calm about that. But for this match, and the fact that it's also been a bit of a problem of trying to actually get results over in North Queensland, like, I think ever since I've started, like, trying to, like, doing this, like talking about rugby league on this channel, I don't think we've won up there, it is a bit of a problem, and I just think with the current momentum the Cowboys are in, I reckon the Cowboys should be able to get the job done. And finally, the 7:35 kickoff, we've got the Melbourne Storm up against the New Zealand Warriors. Of course, the Storm pulling out probably one of the best displays I've seen in recent memory, holding Penrith to 0 in a gutsy 8-0 win over them. And the New Zealand Warriors had a really good start against the Cronulla Sharks, but the Sharks just came into it and just couldn't let the Warriors back into the match. And it's going to be a very interesting game on how these effects will go. Obviously, you know, like, you got some of the best coaches in the NRL. You've got obviously Craig Bellamy and Andrew Webster. You've got a Storm team that wants to cement themselves as proper contenders, which for some reason not a lot of people do, but it always ends up happening about Melbourne being, like, on top and whatnot. The Warriors obviously need to actually get their season started. I think this is going to be an absolute cracker of a match, but I will say I do think Melbourne should be able to close it out. And now we move on to Sunday. We start off with 4 p.m. We've actually got another very good match, and I'm actually looking forward to see. It is the Manly Seagulls up against the Sydney Roosters. Obviously, both teams did get wins at Vegas. It just kind of seemed like a magic round. I've kept, like, misinterpreting, like, the words in that and whatnot, because I'm an idiot. But basically, Manly, in a very good game against the Rabbitohs, were able to cling back and swing into the match, and were able to get the job done. The Roosters were able to shut out Brisbane for a considerable amount of time. Probably wasn't the best performance for the Roosters, but it did get them the win, which is, you know, a very positive sign. Jason Saab, I'm not too sure if he's going to be named, because he did pick up a little bit of that hamstring injury near the final parts of that match against South Sydney. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. It's quite close in the market, and I'm actually going to go a little bit on the ground. I think
hello. I'm editing this now, and I've actually going to actually change my tip. So initially I was going to say that I thought that Manly were going to win this, but just looking at it more, I'm changing to the Roosters. And the benefit of this is if the Roosters don't end up winning, you could just delete this out of the video and you'd be none the wiser. So delete as appropriate.
And finally, we're going to go into the last match, which is the Redcliffe Dolphins up against the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Now, the Dolphins got their booty smacked, is probably the most professional term you can use in this situation. Anything that could have gone wrong for the Dolphins did. Like, Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, like, I think he's one of the better players in the NRL, but he just had an absolute shocker. And hopefully he does bounce back from this. And then you got the St. George Illawarra Dragons, who just, well done. Like, absolute brilliant showcase against the Titans, and actually just second place on the ladder. Interestingly, for this match, the betting odds, they're both, like, dead even, which I honestly have no idea why. Like, you have a team who's currently dead last playing against a team who is currently second, and obviously, you know, like, form and all that, like, it doesn't really have that much of a factor, but I mean, like, come on, you'd think that the Dragons should be favourites in this, and that's the team I'm going to go for in this, because it's just, really happy for the Dragons. I just think they're going to play well, and the Dolphins are going to take a little bit to try to come back into this season. So that's my predictions for NRL Round 2. Let me know who you have in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all later.